Welcome to the CodeEpicenter.com tutorials. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to implement logging functionality in the Yii Framework 2. I've seen a lot of people having this problem. They don't understand the concept how to implement logging functionality, and basically you can see a lot of posts on an official Yii Framework forum or on a Stack Overflow and so on, and that's why I decided to record a good video explaining everything. So when you download a Yii basic application, the login functionality is already implemented. That's a good thing, but the bad thing is users are coming from a file, and these are static values, and they are not coming from a database. And our task today is just to implement logging functionality with the users coming from a database. Okay, so we will try to preserve all the code, and we will do some just slight changes, and in order to implement everything. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is you have to define a database table in your database management system. In my case, it's a MySQL database management system, and in my case this is a backend user table, and this table contains an ID, first name, last name, username, password, and authKey column. This is pretty easy, and you probably created a lot of times table like this, but maybe your table name is not backend user, it's administrators or admin, or I don't know. So this is the first step. Okay. The second step is to generate a model from this class. We already learned that in order to generate models we are using a G tool. So I will enter the G tool, I'll say okay, I want to create a model, and table name is a backend user, model class, it's called backend user, and I want to generate this model. Okay, and this way we are generating our model class. So here you see I have a backend user class defined. In order to understand the principle how to implement the logging functionality, you have to understand two classes and one interface. The first class is your custom class. In my case, this is a backend user class. So we already created this custom class, and we have everything. Okay. The second class you have to understand is a class called Yii Web User, and this class is just a default user component. So you can see a user component is just an instance of a Yii Web User class. Okay. Sometimes I see a lot of people are naming their custom class as just a user, and then they mix their custom class with a Yii Web User component. That is the reason why I intentionally named my custom class as a backend user, so you can see the difference between my custom class, which is called backend user, and the Yii default component, which is type of Yii Web User. If you enter this class, you will see that inside of this class there is a method called login. So this method will be called in order to log in a user. Okay. So these are the two classes you have to understand. What is your custom class? We already created our custom class. The second class is this Yii Web User class, and the third thing you have to pay attention on is this identity. So this login method as a parameter receives a Yii Web Identity Interface object. This means when you call a login function, you have to send as a parameter an object which implements methods defined in this interface. And when you click on Identity Interface, there are several methods you have to define in your custom class. Okay. In my case, backend user is my custom class, but I have to implement identity interface. So I will write implement identity interface. That's pretty cool. Now I want to implement all abstract methods. That's cool. And here are a few methods I have to define. Okay. Get authKey is just a function which returns an authKey for a current user. So I will write this authKey and I will return. So this authKey is just a value of this column in the database. Okay. Get ID, I can say this ID, return. Validate authKey. In this function we are checking whether the received authorization key is equal to the one defined in the class. So this authKey is equal to authKey. Find identity, because it's static method, I can write self find one, and I will find it by ID, and I will say here return. Okay, and here also return. It's good. And here find identity by access token. Unfortunately, in my database, I didn't want to define an access token. I don't need an access token, and I don't want to define it. So here I will say, okay, if I don't have an access token, if someone calls this action, I will throw an exception. Okay. Not supported exception. That's good. So this way, I just defined, I implemented all methods which are defined in identity interface. So this is pretty cool. This way I finished my backend user class. Now I'm ready to log in my user. You will see that I will define just 2 additional methods because all the login functionality which is already implemented requires me to implement just 2 additional methods, and then the login functionality will work with the database, and that's it. So let us try. In controllers, in the side controller, I have here a method called login. So it's action called login. When I want to log in my user, I will click on login, and this login page will show. Actually, this action is called, and it's here I'm guest user, so this will not be executed. Login form is created because this is not post request. We are sending a get request. The login view will be rendered, and then the form will be displayed. The page will be displayed. When I enter some values here, okay, username and password, and when I click on the login, we are sending a post request. Actually, we will enter this line here. We will first load the values from a post array to the model, and this model is just an object of the type login form, and then we will call a login method of this login form class. Okay, so in this model we are saving just username, password, and this remember me checkbox. Okay, so when I enter a login form, you see that this login form has 3 attributes, properties. It's username, password, and remember me, and the private attribute, so private property called user. And in a side controller, we first load the values, and then we call a login function. Okay, and this login function is defined in this class. So if we go to the login form, here in the login, you can see that we are trying to log in our user, and here we are accessing a user component and user component is just a class called Yii Web User, and this class has a login method. So this line here is just a method defined in a Yii Web User class. That's pretty fine, and this method here is getting a user. So if I go to this method is defined here, you can see that we are checking whether the user is false, so we didn't get a user from a database. But here, when you first time download the Yii application, here will be here you will see user find by username. But my custom class is not called user, it's called backend user. Yeah. And in backend user, I have to define a static function called find by username, and then I will provide a username. So in a backend user class, I have to define a static method called find by username. So let's go in a backend user, and here we will define public static function find by username, and there is one parameter username, and here we are return self find one condition. We can say okay, where username is equal to username. Okay, so what is this? So this function will receive a username as a parameter. It will check, it will go to the database, and it will try to find a user with this username. In my case, I have a one user defined in my database, and if I write code.epicenter, this user will be returned from a database. Okay, so let's go back to the login form. So here in this user property, we will actually, this user property will contain value from a database. So here when we enter code.epicenter, here this object will be saved, and we are returning a user from a database. That's pretty fine, but the question is how the password is now validated. So who is validating whether the password is good or not? As you can see here in the rules, we defined username and password that they are required. Remember me is boolean because it's checkbox, and password, in order password is validated by the custom function called validate password. In a validate password, we are checking if the user is not false, and if a user validate password is returning true. So user object is an object of a class backend user, and here we are calling a validate password, but this function is still not defined in our backend user class. So this is the second function we have to implement, second additional function we have to implement, and it's pretty easy. So on a user object, which is type of backend user, we are calling validate password, and we are providing password from the login form. So in a backend user, we go back and we will define a public function called validate password, and we are sending a password. Here we just want to check whether this password is equal to password. This way, so now we have finished with the logging functionality. So what we have done is we implemented all the methods defined in the identity interface, and we added additional two methods, find by username and validate password, and that's everything. The whole logic in a login form in a site controller can be reused, so you don't have to write any line of code. Everything can be reused. So let us try. Just to mention that here I didn't want to complicate, I didn't want to hash my passwords in the database, but of course you have to do that. So I'm encouraging you, it's really important thing that you hash your passwords in the database, but here I didn't want to complicate things. So let us try now to implement a login system. So here I have a user in my database. The username is code.epicenter and the password is 12345. So code epicenter and the password is 12345, and I will try to log in. Okay, and as you can see here, user is logged in. User is coming from a database and everything is now logged in. What is now, I'm going to explain you some few fields. I've seen a lot of people having some issues with the field called authKey. So what is authKey? When you log in, and when you in your web configuration, when you set enable auto login to true, this is actually property of a user class, okay, of a user component, and this is just Yii web user class. When you set this field to be true, then the value authKey is saved in a cookie. Okay. I will show you now that there is that value saved in a cookie. Okay, this is it. So identity, and here you can find the value and the value from a database. Okay. And when your session is destroyed, then the Yii Framework will try to automatically log in user from using a cookie. Okay. So here I have all my sessions in a temporary folder of a WAMP. So I will try now to delete all sessions. Okay. And we will check out what will happen. So as you can see, the user is still logged in even if I deleted all my sessions. We will see what is happening in our log, because what is happening now is just you can see that you can see how the value is actually no roots, handle application, bootstrap, run query, login by cookie. So here you can see that login by cookie function is called, and the value from the cookie is checked and user is logged in. Okay, but sometimes you don't want to implement this. So authorization key you don't want to implement, and that's it. Okay, so what will happen in that scenario? In that scenario, when you don't want this this column in your database table, you will delete it. Just to mention that when you define the authorization key, so authKey column, this column, the values in this column has to be unique per user. Okay, but I will now delete this column, remove it, and I will save. So now I have changed the database structure. Okay, but enabled auto login now is not supported because I have to set this field now to false. Okay, if I want to preserve this key, this value to true, then in a backend user, in validate authorization key, you can return true or something, but this is not good. This is a security issue and don't do it. So here I want to say, okay, enable autologin to false, and in a backend user I can so these methods are not supported anymore because there is no authKey column defined in my database, so I can just copy and paste this everywhere where the authKey column is. So get authKey column, it's not supported. Find identity, validate authKey, and everything else is supported. So now when I want to log in, so now I will log out just you to see what is happening. Now I want to log in, that's fine. Username is code epicenter, password is 12345. I want to log in. I'm logged in. But now if I delete all sessions from my Apache server, and when I refresh the page, I am not logged in anymore because there is no value in a cookie, and when the sessions are destroyed, user is not logged in anymore. So you are controlling that by changing the values here in this field. One additional important thing which I forget to tell you about, when you define your custom class called backend user, this value, so the class name has to be defined in a web configuration file in a user component identity class. So here when you first download the Yii application, here the user class will be written, but if you implement your custom class, in my case that's backend user, then I say, okay, for identity don't use a user class, because I created a new class which is now working with the database, and use this class in order to preserve identity, so to make identity user identity. So here you have to write backend user, yeah. And now everything is working. Okay. This is the whole story. The whole story is now there. If you want to implement logging functionality from a file, the principles is the same. You define your class, you implement identity interface, but instead of going to the database, you go to the file, you check whether the user is there, you check the password, and so on and so on, and the principle now is really easy. I hope you enjoyed my tutorial. Please, if you have any questions or if you have any suggestions, just send me an email. Visit thecodepicenter.com for updates and leave a comment. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.